This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Well, this is a little bit different, having covered a number of different elections through the years, municipally, provincially, federally. We've never had an episode the day after an election where the results have been, to a certain degree, unclear, where the electorate and commentators alike are waiting to know exactly how things have played out. So this episode of Real Talk will be a little bit different than we envisioned it for the months and weeks leading up to Election Day in Alberta, October 20th. What do we know? We do know that Jeremy Farkas appears to have won a nail-biter down in Calgary. However, his team confirming to us that they have not yet confirmed the results. And with results this tight, we're talking 0.2% over Sonia Sharp. There will no doubt be a recount. We'll get into that with our panel today. Edmontonians are still waiting to know who will be their next mayor. And the team at Taproot Edmonton has been on top of this. We'll be talking to them today to keep you updated. And the fact of the matter is, friends, as you know, Real Talk coming to you live streaming every weekday morning, released later on podcasts. Things could change while we're recording this episode. We could have news to report as soon as this podcast is released. So this week here on Real Talk, we're looking forward to getting into the results of the Alberta municipal elections and discussing what it means for Albertans living in rural communities, in urban communities, what it means for the municipality's dynamic with Danielle Smith's UCP government, what it means, of course, as well as Alberta communities grapple with the good problem to have, that is, an explosion in population, optimism around industry and investment in the province of Alberta. I guess the point I'm making is there's a lot to talk about, and we're grateful to have you here with us. To our morning after Real Talk Roundtable in just a moment, but first, I want to let you know that this episode of Real Talk is proudly presented by our friends at Hansen Distillery. Real Talk, real spirits. Hansen Distillery is Edmonton's original distillery, rooted in prairie grit and a rebellious spirit. Hansen is known for authentic small batch whiskey, vodka, gin, moonshine, and unique liqueurs crafted right here in the capital city with local Alberta ingredients. And every bottle tells a true story of passion, heritage, and hands-on craftsmanship. Raise a glass to Real Talk and real spirits. Visit Hansen Distillery on 174th Street, 111th Avenue, or check out their latest creations in Alberta liquor stores. Proudly local, always original, made right here. You can learn more by visiting hansendistillery.com. As we say hello in our Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton to longtime Alberta MLA and Edmonton City Councillor Karen Leibovici. It's nice to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
The managing editor of Taproot Edmonton, Tim Querengesser, joining us in studio. Tim, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and our voice out of Calgary today, he is the lead columnist for Canada's National Observer, Max Fawcett, joining us. Max, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Why don't we kick things off with you? Get your mic down in front of your mouth so we can hear you. If that's the mic you're using, want to hear you loud. There we go. That sounds great, Max. We've just received word, of course, just moments ago that Jeremy Farkas, a former Calgary City Councillor who suffered a disappointing loss to Jyoti Gondek in the most recent municipal election, appears to have avenged that loss. A tight race between him and Calgary Councillor Sonia Sharp. Take us into what they're talking about down in Calgary.
Yeah, it's a very striking outcome in some respects. You know, this is the first time that an incumbent mayor in Calgary has been unseated in 45 years since Ralph Klein became mayor, I believe, in 1980. So this is, you know, a pretty big vote for change, but it's also a vote for a guy who lost the last mayoral election. You know, so the change vote probably would have been Sonia Sharp and who knows, maybe she pulls ahead on the recount. But, Farkas is a very interesting story. He's gone through this, some would say metamorphosis, some would say not much of a change, but I believe the guy. I think his experience in losing the last mayoral election and finding out who his real friends were has put him on a path to kind of getting to know himself better, and Calgarians appear to want to see where that takes their city. He is a small government guy, but he is not aligned with the UCP. He is not going to sort of walk in the footsteps that they want him to, perhaps the way Miss Sharp would have. And I think it's a pretty compelling political story, even if some people are, I think, already a little bit tired of hearing about Jeremy Farkas's reinvention.
Okay, so here, and we'll reference Post Media's reporting on this at CalgaryHerald.com. They have the vote total with Jeremy Farkas, 91,065 votes. Sonia Sharp with 90,480. That is tight. The incumbent, Jyoti Gondek, with 71,397. And then you have two, to be honest, all things considered, Jeff Davison, 47,000 and change. Brian Thiessen, 40,000 and change. Karen, these are not small numbers. Securing 40,000 votes, let alone having 5 candidates with 40,000 or more, that's a big deal in a municipal election. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that the voters were conflicted and that they weren't sure which vision they were going to vote for. I think that's part of what we saw here in Edmonton as well, where you had candidates who presented themselves well. They were all, when you look at it, our candidates are nice people, right? They people felt that they understood them, they knew them. But then they started to look at what were the policy differences and where were they coming from. And that's where I think people got a little confused as well, because there was so much overlap in this election. Everyone was talking about taxes. Everyone was talking about homelessness. Everyone was talking about affordable housing. And so how do you differentiate in regards to what does that mean? What does it translate into over a 4-year period in how you're going to address those issues? And I think that's where people got confused. They didn't quite know. So when you go and you look at the ballot and you think, oh, I like this guy, but I like that guy too, who do you vote for? And that's the vote splitting starts to occur. And I think that's what we saw probably down in Calgary, though it seems 40,000 is good, but 91,000 is better. And that's what happened, right?
Yeah, this is, so you have to assume, Max, that Sonia Sharp's team would request a recount in this situation. Of course, we're going to spend some time talking to all three of you about how this election has played out differently based on the game-changing element that the UCP infused into this. And obviously, voters have told us as much. We'll get to the results of an unscientific, unofficial Twitter poll in just a moment. Was a vote split, do you think, something that it came into the mix, Max, as you evaluate the numbers down out of Calgary?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's such a chaotic vote split. You had, Jeff Davison presumably taking votes that could have gone to Sonia Sharp. You have Brian Thiessen, who probably took some votes that could have gone to Jeremy Farkas. I don't know where Jyoti Gondek's votes would have gone. It was just a very chaotic field, and it was interesting because there really wasn't that much on substance that differentiated them from each other. They all were opposed in their own ways to the blanket rezoning that was done here under the previous council. They were all in their own ways supportive of, affordable housing, better policing, there weren't big substantive policy cleavages. It was really just a contest of personalities, of who do you like more, who do you trust more. And clearly it was a close one. The dynamic that stands out for me is, in one respect, this was a huge change election. So, the incumbent mayor loses. Almost all of the progressive incumbent councillors either are defeated or don't even run. So you get this big change in the face and the constitution of council. But for what? What is the mandate here? What are the voters trying to tell their elected officials? And to me, it's really not clear. There's no single sort of overarching thing that they have been tasked with doing other than not being the previous council, which was by the end just wildly unpopular. And I think the fact that you had so many incumbents not running speaks to the mood out there.
Tim, you and your team at Taproot has done a remarkable job covering this election. Your colleague Karen Unland was on the show a short time ago talking to us about your coverage, about the surveys that you made available to help pair voters up maybe with their best fit for councillor, for mayor. I'm taking a look at edmonton.taproot.vote as we're speaking, and it's updating in real time. So we're getting a sense of how Edmonton could play out, but the count is, as we record this episode, behind in Edmonton. We'll get to those numbers in just a little bit. Obviously, Karen, very familiar with the halls of City Hall down in Alberta's capital city, but just your thoughts on how things appear to be playing out in Calgary.
I would echo what Max is saying about Calgary here in Edmonton, and that voters really we really don't know what this mandate is that we're seeing. That looks like Andrew Knack has a slim, but as Karen and I were talking before we went on air, this lead that Andrew Knack has is very much not secured at the moment. We don't have a lot of polls reporting. We were up till 1 o'clock last night trying to get some stuff out of the city of Edmonton. By about 10:30, we got something finally. Calgary was already 50,000 votes in. But yeah, we don't know what this mandate is, because so many of these candidates were so identical, as the two other people here are talking about, that they were really running on similar platforms, and it came down to sort of like a voter analysis of their personality or their character, really. And we saw some things happen with Mr. Cartmell through the campaign that maybe have influenced this outcome somewhat. We had Michael Walters enter the race. You could argue that perhaps took away some votes that could have gone Cartmell's way. He's currently in third. So, but again, what is this result really telling us? We have across the board in Edmonton a vote for incumbency, which is interesting. We had incumbents backing away from their incumbency, if you will, during the election. People wouldn't put on their signs, "Re-elect me," just said, just elect me, don't re-elect me. They wanted to distance themselves from that council. Yet here they are. They're back in.
What a dramatic departure from your classic re-election strategy. Incumbency has obviously been a huge advantage in most contexts or most circumstances, regardless of the election, regardless of the stakes, hasn't it?
Absolutely, because it's the name recognition, and in municipal politics, that's key, is that name recognition. But what's interesting is when you delve down into the statistics we have so far, if you look at the second and third votes that have come in each area, you find that if you have Better Edmonton and Pace, you add those together, they actually have more votes than what the incumbent does.
Right.
So I hope that sends a message that what voters are clearly looking for is change. And if the incumbents have tried to distance themselves from being on the last council, then they've got to keep that on a go-forward basis, that they are going to be different, because that's what the voter is saying.
Karen Leibovici, Tim Querengesser, and Max Fawcett joining us in our feature interview today, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Let's take a look as we speak at edmonton.taproot.vote as of 8:45 Mountain Time on the 21st of October. Edmonton's race for mayor led at this point by Andrew Knack with 48 out of 236 polls reporting 54,500 votes cast. Knack with 37.7% of the vote. That's about 20,500. Tim Cartmell on his heels at just under 29% of the vote. That still puts him about 5,000 votes behind. Walters in third with 11%. Omar Mohammed, a very compelling story this election, just a point below Michael Walters, almost at 11% of the vote. Raheem Jaffer just under 5% of the vote. The Omar Mohammed campaign, as soon as I mentioned it, Karen, you just started nodding, you started smiling. Whether or not you voted for this guy, I feel that everyone acknowledges he is a force of nature, a pediatric dentist who sold his practice to run for mayor. My own editorial note is that I've heard dozens, if not hundreds of people say they wish he would have run for council, not run for mayor. Your thoughts on his campaign?
Well, I've heard the exact same thing. And when you say force of nature, absolutely. And I think that points to how social media actually plays now into politics and into whether or not, people understand you and know what you're saying, and whether they're going to vote for you. And when you look at, a former city councillor, Michael Walters, who was on council for 8 years, and you've got Omar Mohammed, who's come out of nowhere, and they're, a point apart in the votes that they gathered. I think that really points to how much you have to pay attention to the part that social media plays.
What I found interesting, though, is how Edmonton and Calgary sort of echo each other in that they have rejected the parties at the mayoral level. That we both have independents winning in the races at the mayoral level. Tim Cartmell's trailing Andrew Knack here in Edmonton. Better Edmonton is not doing so well. The strongest showing of Better Edmonton is an incumbent, Karen Principe.
Or maybe Reed Clark. It looks like Reed Clark's going to walk away with his riding.
Absolutely, but I'd say the strongest right now, the biggest lead is Karen Principe, who's an incumbent. So what I feel voters have sort of rejected, if they weren't really asked the question directly, is the provincial, let's say, changing of some of the dynamic here to favor different outcomes. And so what we've seen in Edmonton is really just sticking to what Edmonton is known for, which is this progressive base that shows up and kind of reelects people. It's really durable.
It's not the same story, Max, down in Calgary. Nobody's going to call. Well, I guess you can make up your own mind on that. Look at me spinning my tires before I make the assertion. I was going to say nobody's going to call Jeremy Farkas a right winger, but when Jeremy Farkas was on council, Karen, you don't look convinced, but he was certainly the conservative voice on council, or one of the more prominent ones. Loses the election to Jyoti Gondek. People read into that what they will, as Amarjeet Sohi also elected at the same time in Edmonton. Everyone says, look at the progressive leanings of these councils. But then you have your top two finishers. I mean, Jyoti Gondek finishes third in Calgary. I mean, unless things dramatically change, but that's what we're going to go ahead and expect. Sonia Sharp, strong showing there, though, too. The strongest showing probably of any of the mayoral candidates representing a political party in the province of Alberta. And two small C conservative candidates, let's call them that, as the top two down in Calgary. That doesn't appear to be the direction that Edmonton's going right now.
Yeah, that tracks. Calgary, I think, has always elected, center-right to center-center mayors. I think Naheed Nenshi was, in a lot of respects, a center-to-center-right mayor. That is kind of what works down here. But I do want to amplify and echo Tim's point, which is, if there is a sort of single overarching message coming out of the two municipal elections, it's that voters don't want these parties. They're not interested. It hasn't worked. There was a progressive party in Calgary. There was a conservative. There are a couple of conservative ones. Not any of them made appreciable gains. There's no slate. There was no wave. It was really the incumbents who then signed on to one of these parties that got elected under a party banner. It wasn't the banner that was doing the work. You see Jeremy Farkas, who ran as an independent. He made that very clear. That was part of his pitch. Same with Jyoti Gondek. So I think that is the big takeaway, is that the province has tried to ram this down the throats of people who live in our two biggest cities, and the people who live in those cities are rejecting it. They don't want parties at the municipal level. It doesn't clarify things. It doesn't really help things. It interferes with what we want from our municipal politics, which is independent people having independent positions on issues they care about.
Yeah, we've got a note here in our live chat powered by Park Power. Neil Koratash is watching us this morning. Neil's pursuing a seat on St. Albert City Council. He says, good morning, Real Talkers. He says, can we just reiterate why we don't have results? He said, a stupid and costly Bill 20. We also have this unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll underway asking you, Real Talkers, how long it took you to cast your ballot, how long it took you to vote on October 20th. We'll get to those results. It's our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Max Fawcett's down in Calgary. Karen Leibovici, Tim Querengesser joining us in our downtown Edmonton studio. You can always have your say, regardless of if you're checking out the show live streaming or later, by sending us an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com.
Edmonton is here because the river is here. So we care for it, protect it, share it. The water of the North Saskatchewan sustains all of us. It's a big job to treat and deliver it, river to tap, to over 1 million people. So you can have and enjoy a glass of the Sask. On tap Made local by Epcor.
All right, as our in-studio guests enjoy their own glass of the Sask from our friends at Epcor, I want to remind you that California Closets is ready right now to sit down with you. That free consultation you book at californiaclosets.ca to discuss your next dream project, whether that's the walk-in closet you know you deserve, whether it's reinventing your guest bedroom to turn it into a home office, one of those Murphy beds. They'll blow your mind. Or maybe it's your garage, the workhorse of your home you're going to invest in. You can make the most of your space with California Closets. Everything they manufacture right here in Alberta is guaranteed for life. This proudly Canadian-owned and operated company, ready to hear from you today at californiaclosets.ca. I want to give a shout out to all the Real Talk Patreon supporters, all of our YouTube Real Deal and Real VIP channel subscribers who joined us at Arcadia Brewing Company for our Real Talk VIP, get this, the longest named party we've ever thrown. The Real Talk VIP Blue Jays Game 7 Alberta Elections Watch Party. Our friends at Friesen Brothers catered the whole thing and did an absolutely beautiful job with wraps and sourdough sandwiches. Are you kidding me? Look at those. The fresh veg and, of course, fabulous fine meats and cheeses. We ordered it at cateringbyfriesen.com. You can do the exact same thing. Your next opportunity to save 15% off grocery purchases of $75 or more will be the 1st of November. You can get more details today at Friesen.com. Our friends at Edmonton Chamber of Commerce paying close attention to those election results. That goes without saying, but they're also busy this week. It's Small Business Week in Edmonton, and the Chamber's hosting 17 incredible events through the week. You can learn more at edmontonchamber.com. These are events packed with real skills, real stories, and real conversations to help small business owners and their teams grow and thrive in 2025 and beyond. Workshops, panel discussions, networking mixers, and expert sessions covering everything from digital marketing and leadership to the future of Alberta's local economy. You can sign up today, get your tickets, and check out more on the benefits of membership by checking out edmontonchamber.com. It is the day after the municipal elections in Alberta. A longtime MLA and Edmonton City Councillor Karen Leibovici with us in studio alongside Taproot's managing editor Tim Querengesser, the lead columnist for Canada's National Observer Max Fawcett, joining us in Calgary. Tim, take us into this election, quite a bit different than anything that Albertans will have experienced in recent memory. And for many of them, it may have been the advent of political parties. For some of them, it may have just been the voting experience showing up and in many circumstances, taking a lot longer than people budgeted for.
Yeah, it happened to me. I showed up what I thought was a reasonable 10 a.m. and spent more than an hour in line, which I found quite surprising. But then as the night wore on, I was looking on social media, as you do, and was hearing reports of 2-3 hours, people in line. I believe people were voting as late as 10 p.m. here, having stood in line until the polls closed and being offered that vote because they're in line. I'm worrying that people gave up. We have a very low voter turnout. I'm worrying people gave up and walked away, which is always a unfortunate result.
Yeah, no kidding. We have an unofficial, unscientific Twitter poll. You've still got, if you're watching or listening to this live, you got about 8 hours left. This thing will wrap mid-afternoon on the 21st of October. We're asking you again. This is unofficial and unscientific, but how long did it take you to vote? Just over half, 50.9%. 51% of you are letting us know it took you fewer than 30 minutes, less than half an hour. About a quarter of you, 24% between 30 and 60 minutes. 1 in 5, let's say, 17% reporting a wait of longer than an hour, and about 8% of you said that you're not voting. Karen, if nothing else, I'm thrilled that the Real Talk enthusiasts, fewer than 1 in 10 did not vote. What was your voting experience like, and what are your thoughts on how the game changed this election?
Well, my husband and I went to vote at about 12:30, 1 o'clock, and it was an hour wait. And there was one line when you went in, so you could register, and then you got out of that line and went into the line where, they looked at your ID, and then you could actually put your ballot finally in a ballot box. And I know you'd start to talk to people who are around you, and it was like, this has got to be more efficient. There's got to be a faster and better way. Hand out those forms as you're standing in line. So you get rid of one line, and then you could have more people who are giving you your ballots. But, hindsight is always great. And if we're still continuing with these kind of ballots that are hand counted in 4 years' time, it's got to be run more efficiently. I heard stories from people who came, they waited 45 minutes, they then had to go because they went to work, they had a meeting, whatever, they came back, it was another 45 minutes. And some I saw personally who came, looked at the line, and left, and they weren't going to vote. And it shouldn't be that way.
That just kills me to hear that.
Yeah.
Sorry. The advance vote was also limited this time around, so we had 5 days rather than 10 in Edmonton. I'm not sure what it was in Calgary, but even less opportunity to avoid those lines because you have to work, whatever. Exactly. You have to do your civic duty.
Let me, and I want to, Max, to you in a second on the question. I know that a lot of people have talked about, the UCP going to the hand-counted ballots. Had a great conversation, as a matter of fact, with Supriya Dwivedi on the 20th of October in our most recent episode about this, on the hand-counted ballots, the move away from the electronic voting machines and what may motivate that. She's not sold on the idea that it's a bad idea. I thought Supriya gave it a very fair shake. I would say this, personally, my opinion, if you're making a move, Max, to satiate or satisfy folks who may have concerns around the validity of the count, and we all know what we're talking about here. It's the same thing about Donald Trump calling into question the 2020 election results in the United States. It's quite obviously, in my mind, no one's convinced me otherwise, a spin-off of that sentiment. But if the provincial government's response to that actually ends up suppressing voter participation, if it leads directly to people, including people who showed up to vote, leaving before they vote, we need to talk about what's worse, don't we?
We do, and I've been going back and forth on whether all of this, and I waited 40 minutes. It was a what show, not well organized, not well administered, frustrating for a lot of people. I go back and forth on whether this is deliberate, a deliberate attempt to kind of suppress turnout and participation, or if it's just an accident. I guess I fall back on Hanlon's razor, which is never attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence. And I think that may be what's happening here, but it's a good reminder to Albertans that this is what it looks like when you govern the province in the interest of a small, Facebook-addled, conspiracy-minded minority. This is the government making changes to the way we participate in our municipal elections, to the changes to the voting systems that impacted basically all of us. Some people couldn't even vote, because they needed to appease a very small portion of their base, a very small portion of the public, perhaps a very large portion of their base, that believes these conspiracies, that previous elections were irregular, that they had people voting who shouldn't, that they were problematic. We all know they weren't. We all know that the elections in this province have always been administered incredibly efficiently and effectively. But we have to go along with this charade because the premier needs to keep these people in line, or they'll vote her out as leader. And I am sure there are other less visible examples of this throughout the province, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education, you name it. When you make policy in the name of a small group of people that are not always connected to reality, the rest of us suffer.
What do you think, Karen? Do you think it was intentional, like Max is suggesting?
I would hope not, and because I believe in our democratic system, and I would hope that wasn't the reason. I think part of the fallout of this new way of voting was the fact that it was going to cost municipalities more. In the city of Edmonton, they had to hire 1,200 more people. It cost $5 million more. And it still wasn't as efficient as it could be. There's other smaller rural communities across the province who actually couldn't afford to have more people to be able to make the system more efficient. And as a result, those votes aren't even in. They're not counted yet because they couldn't afford to have more people doing the counting. So, if there's going to be the policy change from the provincial government, the money should flow to the municipalities so they can actually have a system that is effective.
I want to get to our Real Talk live chat. We're hearing from Real Talkers across the province and beyond. Some of you curious watching from outside Alberta. Darren says, my vice principal got elected to council in Stony Plain. I think that she'll be great. We're seeing others of you just with the personal reports. Emily G says, one of my kids' friends' dads got elected, so that's pretty cool. Kenzie says the situation Kenzie went to was well staffed. It was efficient and with no issues, but the line was still taking over an hour. Tony says she was lucky to get in and out in about 15 minutes. She says, I was really surprised after hearing that other voting stations had considerably longer wait times. And we were hearing that on my unofficial Twitter poll as well. Dr. Fiona Matatal, shout out to her down in Calgary, says about 40 minutes it took her in Southwest Calgary. She said, but I did take the time in line to discuss the history of women getting the vote with my kiddo. She says, I also ran into an old patient. That's music to my ears. Isn't that good to hear? Joji lets us know that down in Ward 9 in Calgary, it took 2 hours and 40 minutes to vote. Jonathan Sherrick, forever an optimist, says his wait was 2 hours, but he got to visit with a lot of neighbors. Dr. Angela Schrader was tweeting us while she was still in line at a 75-minute wait. Salty Lady says over 3 hours. I asked where that was, but they didn't respond. Kevin McDonald did what some folks did, says it took me less than 5 minutes to vote. He says, but I also went to the early polling. The process slower than usual as the workers had to write a bunch of stuff out. I mean, shout out to people who work these elections. Generally speaking, it's a pretty thankless job, but the workload was onerous for a lot of people. My experience took me about an hour, but I was filling out my own forms. I was hearing at some polling stations the workers were filling out form after form after form. I can't imagine, even just logistically, the hand cramps that you would deal with. It'd be absolutely brutal. I wanted to get to this note. Down in Calgary, we're jumping back and forth between the two cities and, of course, following storylines across the province as well. But Dr. Dwayne Bratt, political scientist out of Mount Royal University, making the point that he does expect a recount request for Sonia Sharp because the gap between Farkas and Sharp is 0.2%. The rules say you can request a recount even with hand-counted ballots if the gap is smaller than a 0.5 percentage point. He says, let's see what happens there. But an interesting point here too, Karen, because of the low voter turnout and more competitive multi-candidate race, Farkas got 25,000 fewer votes than last election and a lower percentage of the vote by almost 4%, but he won compared to when he was decisively beaten by Jyoti Gondek. Sometimes the playbook kind of gets thrown out as the stakes change.
Well, exactly. And, when it comes to the elections, it's first past the post. So whether it's one vote or 400 votes, you're the winner. And it's nice to have those statistics, but what does it mean? And we started off this by saying, you look at the large number of votes that went to all of the candidates, and what does that mean in terms of what people were thinking about the election and about how they were going to place their votes and what they want out of this next city council, whether it's in Calgary and Edmonton or other places within the province where incumbents were defeated. Not all of them were reelected.
I kept hearing rumblings that you were considering throwing your hat into the ring this election. How serious was that?
It was pretty serious. I actually did my own poll, not me personally, but hired a company to do a poll. I had a bit of a campaign team set up. But when push came to shove, there's just so much going on in my life that I wasn't prepared to spend the hours and hours and hours that a city councillor needs to devote to the job. It's a public service, and it takes time away from your family, it takes time away from your friends, it takes time away from you personally. I've got 2 lovely grandchildren, and I want to spend time with them. And so, I decided maybe there's other ways that I could help to make this council more effective, in a sense, and still contribute to the city, but not in an elected role.
No, I had to ask. I appreciate your forthrightness. I asked Stephen Mandel the same question. I had heard rumblings that he was considering. Yes. He said not for mayor, but I guess he had considered a run for city council. Until he said that in consultation with the family manager, he said that they decided collectively it wasn't the best idea. It was kind of an intriguing storyline. Would have been interesting to have a former mayor with a council seat. So people will start to speculate around, what the councils will look like, what the dynamics will look like now. And of course, a big part of that, Tim, is going to be how these councils deal with or negotiate with or work with the provincial government. What are you going to be keeping an eye on?
Well, you read my mind. I wanted to get to this. So I don't know what this result says to the provincial government. The provincial government had a lot to do with this election. Let's be honest here. They've had their fingers in here. So what does this result say to them? And are they now going to meaningfully engage and work with, the capital city of their province to, meaningfully change some of the issues that were brought up in this municipal campaign over and over and over again? And I think voters are a little bit tired of hearing, that's not our jurisdictional responsibility. That's the province. And, this kind of like fight over Venn diagrams of who controls what. I think people are very tired of that, and they want to see change. And I'm not sure what this result, I'd love to hear what the others here think it means, but the province, if they were trying to get a result, they probably got it in Calgary. They didn't get it in Edmonton, let's say. It doesn't seem like to me. So what does that mean for Edmonton now? I'd love to hear what these two think.
Well, yeah, let's put that to you. Now, I would just some background information, or maybe some background observation. In Edmonton, there was kind of this narrative that Tim Carmel, I think, did his best to get ahead of, that he was the UCP's handpicked candidate, that he was the UCP choice in Edmonton. And he went so far as to release a video saying that he was not the UCP candidate and there were no ties to the UCP, which I happen to know didn't land particularly well with some of the staffers or elected representatives at the Alberta legislature. And you wonder, and I was wondering, Max, if it may have been more intuitive, if the public perception is something and it may give you a better shot, why not just lean into it? What are your thoughts on how that was managed and what Tim's teeing up here?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like even in Calgary, where you had Sonia Sharp, who is much more closely aligned with the UCP and the UCP's project and, ran under a party banner. She didn't really come out and talk about that, how she's, going to work hand in glove with Danielle Smith and, she's going to enact the UCP agenda. She really just stuck to her message around, cost of living, taxes, sort of more traditional conservative issues. And I think she understood that in this moment, being perceived as the UCP's handpicked candidate would not hold her in good stead with the part of the public that was considering who to vote for. There's obviously a kind of base vote here that will find the most conservative candidate and vote for them, and they did. But in terms of winning over the large number of people, especially in municipal elections in Calgary, who tend to gravitate to the middle, that would not be helpful. And so I don't think the UCP got what it wanted. Jeremy Farkas is ideologically sort of, small c conservative, but he's not going to work with Danielle Smith hand in glove. I think he understands, after watching Jyoti Gondek really kind of bend over backwards to accommodate the provincial government, that is not the way to go. Jyoti Gondek served up an arena deal right before the last provincial election, and it didn't get her anything. It didn't get her anything with the province. The province came in and messed up the Green Line LRT project here, and it didn't get her anywhere with voters. She finished third. So I think Farkas will read the tea leaves here accordingly. He will not pick a fight with the provincial government. He's going to focus on, picking up the garbage, making sure taxes stay low, stuff like that. But they do not have an ally in either Calgary or Edmonton, and I think that is what they wanted with all the changes they had made going into this election.
What do you think, Karen?
Well, it's an age-old argument in terms of whether provincial politics becomes part of municipal politics. And over the years that I've been involved, councillors and mayors have political leanings. Some are active members of a political party and some are not. And I think that, it's a bit of a conspiracy theory that I think we have to kind of move away from in terms of, the UCP has decided that they're going to take over the municipalities. Let's just put that aside and say that whoever is in the mayor's chair needs to be able to stand up for the city of Edmonton. Whoever's in the mayor's chair needs to be able to walk into the premier's office and say, you know what? We're an asset. Edmonton is an asset to the province of Alberta, and we want to be able to make the province strong. And this is what we need as a municipality. This is what we need as the city of Edmonton. And whether it's dealing with homelessness or affordable housing or transportation or infill wouldn't be, but maybe it really needs to be understood. And I go back so long that I remember when Bill Smith, who was a member of the Conservative Party at the time, he stood up to the premier, and we as a council stood up to the premier, and we passed a motion to say, look, we need certain things as the city of Edmonton, and started to negotiate with the province on that. So, rather than thinking about, okay, this is what UCP wanted, and NDs, if you want to throw it into the mix, let's throw it into the mix in terms of who they supported and who they would want to see. Let's just put that aside and look at, okay, in the future, what do we have to do to make Edmonton strong?
Max?
Well, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory that the UCP has put its thumb on the scale here in the municipal elections. I mean, they passed legislative changes that allow them to exert more control over municipalities, to invalidate decisions made by council, and then they brought this party system in that no one really wanted. So I don't think we can both sides of this and say, well, the NDP does it, but also the UCP does it. And the UCP government tried to put its thumb on the scale here, and they failed. And I think it's worth taking that away.
Super Chat Ken says, here's the thing as well. The process won't change, she says, with all of this, talking about the technical nature of how we're rolling out these elections and the changes, says it's just going to get more expensive with even more bodies needed. We're doing this because of conspiracy theories on technology we don't even use. And that was I think a valuable point that was made on yesterday's episode. The voting tabulators used in the United States different than what had been used in Alberta or used up in Canada, but a good point, a valuable point, I think, there from Super Chat Ken. The dynamic in Edmonton, I want to bring back to this, and Tim, we'll come to you first on this. The Michael Walters factor, I think it's undeniable that it was a factor in Edmonton's election. What's particularly interesting about it, and I think it's been under-discussed publicly in Edmonton, but it's been discussed at length privately, is that Michael Walters is a partner in the firm Berlin that was handling much of the comms and the strategy for the Tim Cartmel for Mayor campaign up until he declared his own candidacy for mayor. And you have to assume that there are some hard feelings there. You have to assume that there were some divided loyalties there. Take us into this, because if Michael Walters holds at about 12% of the vote, which he's at right now, and you tack that on to Tim Cartmel's, which is a little bit of lazy, I won't call it science, but for purposes of speculation, you would assume that it would make this race between Knack and Cartmel a whole lot closer.
You would assume I don't deal in speculation, so I'll just be clear on that.
I'll do that.
Handle the speculation.
You handle the science.
But yes, I have heard those rumblings. I have not reported them, but I have heard them. I hear lots of rumblings. Michael Walters was offering something that I think the other two weren't, and that he was a breath of fresh air in some ways. We had two established councillors fighting it out for mayor. Michael Walters comes along. He has that experience. He has that kind of track record, but he's been out of the game enough that he's perceived to be separate and not part of the council, and offered these what I thought were quite interesting ideas. Like what I found refreshing in this campaign was that there was actual policy ideas thrown out by all three.
Yeah,
legit proper policy. And so what Walters offered was just another way. I don't know about the beef. I think we've all heard about the beef. I don't know if that is legit why Michael Walters came in, but Michael Walters, I hope whoever wins steals from Michael Walters' ideas and says, that's a good idea, I'm going to use that.
I think he certainly has the personality and the poise to be a capable mayor, and his entry into the race was, I think, significant. Are you surprised at how it's playing out, Karen?
Yes, because I thought that he would be a change maker in terms of when he entered the race. I think we all did, and we all kind of went, well, maybe we'll see something different coming out. But it turned out it wasn't to be, and whether it was too late, not enough financial support, name recognition wasn't as high as what they thought it would be, any number of reasons. But he did have a vision that was different than the other candidates, and that's what he brought into the race.
Yeah, what an interesting point you bring up on name recognition, because you have, I mean, you know, in Calgary, you've Jeremy Farkas, who sat out a term and then came back and obviously had enough name recognition for it to resonate. You had Michael Walters. You may question whether or not the name recognition stuck. Raheem Jaffer, Tony Katarina, other veteran politicians that probably didn't fare as well as they wanted. Max, is that in part because Alberta's population is growing so quickly? There's a lot of people that didn't live in Alberta when those names I've mentioned were politicians. Is there some other reason? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. Is there is a lot of churn in our demographic. You know, we have a lot of new people here from Ontario and BC who, you know, don't know who Raheem Jaffer is, don't know who Kent Hare in Calgary is. You know, Kent ran in my ward here, and I believe he finished fourth. You know, he has about as much name recognition as any progressive politician in Calgary, and it didn't do him a lot of good. So, you know, name recognition matters up to a point. I think, you know, especially with the way that mainstream media is a shriveled husk of its former self, and you have social media filling the void, however imperfectly. You have to, in some respects, create your own name recognition in this day and age, and can't rely on you know, previous jobs or previous titles kind of putting you in good stead, because the mix just changes so dramatically and so rapidly from election to election.
I want to thank the three of you for your time. You know, obviously, you know, we're going to know more 5 hours from now, we hope, than we do while we're recording this episode. But just an opportunity for the three of you to offer a closing thought, something you're keeping an eye on, maybe a storyline we haven't yet discussed, and something for the audience with value to take away. Tim, take us away.
I'm just going to follow this voter turnout idea and potentially what that might have suppressed, where people weren't feeling that they could be heard, who turns away when they're frustrated in a line. Is it the base that comes out in Edmonton, the progressive base, or is it the people who are angry? So do we have now, like I heard throughout the campaign how angry people were. I myself was feeling, you know, somewhat frustrated and wasn't decided until I got to the ballot box. So, you know, what was that vote? Who turned away? And what does that angry voice, where does it go now? Like, where does it direct its energy? Where are we going to go over the next 4 years, given that there is a significant chunk of this city who feels very frustrated with things like infill, progressive ideas that are bona fide, going to save us money, but they feel not included or not heard.
Karen?
Well, building a little bit on that, what I would like to see is almost a report card, if that's a possible thing to do. And the report card would be saying, okay, whoever becomes the mayor, this is what your campaign promises were. You said you'd do this in 90 days. You said you were going to do this in 6 months. You said you were going to do whatever. And did you achieve it? Because I think as a voter in 4 years' time, I'd want to know that. Because we always hear, you know, politicians that make promises, they don't follow through, and, you know, it goes on and on. It would be nice for once to actually have that record on an ongoing basis for mayor and for the councillors. What did they promise in the election, and what actually has gotten done?
You'll have to look at Taproot.
Absolutely.
We have the survey, so we kind of have that. We have that report card in process.
Yeah,
Perfect.
This is great. We're showing it right now again at edmonton.taproot.vote. Just a fantastic job, Tim, by you and your team with that. We'll link to that in the show notes for Real Talkers on the podcast and on YouTube. Max, over to you.
I'll be watching, of course, the recount. That seems inevitable here. See if Jeremy Farkas can, in fact, complete his journey. But, you know, I think I'm most interested in seeing how the NDP responds to this, how Naheed Nenshi responds to this, because this is another opportunity for them to tell a story to Albertans about the ways in which the provincial government is not making their life better. You know, they have interfered with municipal elections. They have you know, stuck their thumb in the pie and made it significantly worse for everyone in this province, all to, again, appease this extremely online, conspiracy curious kind of demographic they have. And I think there's a through line there to a broader story that the NDP can tell going into the next election, which is, this government is not governing in your best interests. They are governing in their best interests, which are informed by the best interests of a very small slice of the population. We deserve better in this province. We deserve a provincial government that is governing for everyone. And we see the cost of that with, just the inconvenience and inefficiency of this municipal election. So let's see if the official opposition can actually do its job.
That's Max Fawcett. He is a lead columnist at Canada's National Observer. Max, we'll preserve the integrity of our Alberta elections coverage here, but I will let our audience know that you've got a great new piece, nationalobserver.com. They can check it out how Pierre Poilievre is channeling his inner J.D. Vance, and we'll get you back on the show to talk about that and other matters of importance sometime soon. Thanks for making time for us out of Calgary.
Look forward to it.
And to our friends, Karen Leibovici and Tim Querengesser in Edmonton, thank you so much for making time for us. Again, shout out to you and Mac and Karen and your entire team at Taproot. And it's so nice to connect with you again. And thanks for making time for us. We sure appreciate it.
My pleasure, anytime.
There's nothing like the veteran insights. And there's not a lot of people in Alberta that have 8 years as an MLA and 12 years as a city councillor and president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as well, right?
Yeah.
Hell of a CV. So thanks for making time for us.
Thank
You bet. Real Talkers, we'll look to your comments as well, of course. You can leave them in our live chat if you're watching this live in our live stream presented by California Closets. Of course, you can also send us an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com. This is the 125th year of the Royal Alexandra Hospital, an absolute institution when you're talking about healthcare in Western Canada, not just in Alberta's capital region. And we're celebrating every Tuesday here on the show with a feature with Echoes of the Alex. Today's story, these are echoes through the 125 years, the first 125 years of the Royal Alexandra Hospital. When Avery was admitted to Unit 36 at the Royal Alexandra Hospital, the city's only inpatient mental health unit for children and teens, Avery's family didn't know what to expect. They were scared. They were unsure what each day would bring, but inside the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Center, they found something extraordinary. A team who saw Avery not just as a patient, but a person. The doctors, nurses, and therapists cared for her with incredible compassion. They gave her parents strength when they needed it most, and they helped Avery find her own voice again. One step, one conversation, one breakthrough at a time. Her mom, Lindsay, says it best, says they gave us more than care. They gave us hope. And that's what the Royal Alex does every day. And you can help make that care even better. Your gift will help modernize Unit 36, creating brighter, safer, more comforting spaces for young patients and their families. And that means upgraded patient rooms with new furniture and safety features, warm, welcoming common areas, improved bathroom areas for better hygiene, a soothing sensory room for healing and play, and art murals that bring calm from the moment that families arrive. These improvements will make a real difference in the lives of children who need hope the most. This is Echoes of the Alex. Help us build a brighter healing space for kids at the Royal Alexandra Hospital, and give today at givetoroyalalex.org. Echoes of the Alex is proudly presented Tuesdays on Real Talk by the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation, celebrating 125 years. A shout out to the Real Talkers that have been checking in, letting us know on what their voting experience was like. And Johnny, I loved this comment here from Jillian. I'm assuming referencing Jeremy Farkas's, and I'm just going to say, just to check this here, friends, what appears to be his mayoral win down in Calgary, until that is absolutely confirmed following what we expect to be a recount. But Jeremy Farkas, a regular audience member on this show, a regular contributor to our live chat, Jillian says, so Real Talkers, what's the next promotion? After we lost Supriya Dwivedi temporarily to the Prime Minister's office, Charles Adler to the Red Chamber to the Senate, Jillian wonders, do any of you have sights on being a senator or mayor or Pope. She says apparently the Real Talk community is where everyone's being recruited from. Jillian, I like that very much. Now, there are other Alberta communities, obviously, that have their own storylines here, and we're eager to hear from you, checking in from your neck of the woods on what you're making of how those election results play out. I mean, Leduc County was in touch with us this morning. A shout out to them, including Tani DeBlanco, of course, Glenn Biernet, Kelly Lynn Lewis, Dalverdi, Bonnie Thomas, Glenn Beloza, Ray Scobie. These results are unofficial, and as is the case in other communities. We've checked in on St. Albert as another example. We're doing our best to scan the province in real time as we're recording this, but these results in many municipalities are not going to be declared official until noon on Friday, October 24th. The good news is that our coverage is going to continue through the week here, including political commentary, of course, as it develops. We expect to be speaking to who we believe to be Calgary's mayor-elect, Jeremy Farkas, on tomorrow's show. And if we have news out of Edmonton, of course, we expect that we will speak with that mayor-elect as well. Cheryl and Erica, the co-hosts of The Discourse, will be joining us on Thursday. And on Friday, the highly anticipated return of our Real Talk group chat roundtable, including now former Edmonton City Councillor Sarah Hamilton, who took some time out of the spotlight. This will be her first time back in front of a microphone in quite some time, and we expect that to be an episode that you're not going to want to miss. I want to thank everybody that's subscribing to our YouTube channel. As of late, we've seen a nice bump up, and those of you that are subscribing to the podcast as well. The intrepid technical director of this show, John Hicks, must be impressed that we made it 57 minutes into this episode without even mentioning the fact that Canada's Toronto Blue Jays are off to the World Series.
Yeah,
what an unbelievable game. Game 7 against the Seattle Mariners.
Incredible. You know what I thought was quite interesting is Springer, everyone comparing that home run to like Joe Carter and Batista. It's not on that level, right? Because it's not in the final.
Think?
Well, it's not. It's for me, Joe Carter's always first, right?
To win the World Series.
But then I know the younger kids out there, they think of the Batista bat flip. That's probably number one for them. We'll see what happens in the final here, but it definitely was incredible. What I thought was interesting though is that in his post-game interview, he said, what's her name? May was asking,
Hazel May, yeah.
Hazel May is saying, what does this mean to you and your family and whatever? And he said, yeah, it means a lot to them, but it really means a lot to our fans. He said, our fans, our city, and our country. And I said, wait a minute, bro. We're Americans, but man, it's great to hear that. Like, he loves Canada now.
Yeah.
This is his home. I mean, obviously his family and everyone is here. Because, he's obviously playing professional baseball here. But it's incredible to hear someone say that, especially in a time when, it's tumultuous between us and the States. To hear an American say that he considers the city that he plays in and lives in and the country that he lives in as ours.
Yes.
I just thought that was really awesome.
That is so cool. I agree with you. I saw Darren, by the way, in the live chat here, and Darren just gave a shout out for the Real Talk VIP Blue Jays Game 7 Alberta Elections Watch Party. Darren deserves a shout out. Unless I'm mistaken, I believe he was the very first to arrive. So shout out to Darren. I know that Real Talkers are very competitive in the live chat. They want to know who shows up for the live stream first every morning. Darren was first in person, but he was there, and we were having so much fun there, connecting with, there were some sort of like deeply seated politicos in the room with us. There were some sort of surface level, with regards to political interest, huge Jays fans joining us. So the dynamic in the room was wonderful. Yeah. But the Jays are down 3-1, and you're running out of time, and you're kind of feeling nervous. And one of the Real Talkers in attendance, with 2 on base and Springer at the plate, says, gosh, we had runners on second and third. He says if he could just hit a single, if he could just hit it to right field and just get the outfielders over there. And I swear to God, I said, or he could just hit it out of the park. And the next pitch, gone, and the place just exploded. I feel like this will be a moment for even casual Jays fans to go to the World Series, a Game 7
yeah.
home run to win the American League pennant, will be a moment that I think for some people, you look back on those formative moments, like you mentioned Joe Carter. For me, that's it.
93.
I was a 77. I am a 77 born, so for me, I'm like 16 when that goes down. You never forget that. That's your moment, your connection to that team. And I think that happened last night for a lot of people. Just
for
incredible.
Sure. That's what I mean. I think the younger generation, this will be the moment they remember. Unless something bigger happens. Let's not forget, like, the LA Dodgers coming up next are an absolute tank.
Best player in the history of baseball, arguably, is on their team, right?
Ohtani is an alien. I don't even know. Like, have you ever seen
Best
a guy
baseball player of all time, probably.
who hits that many home runs and also is an amazing pitcher? What
was his last game? 9 strikeouts and 3 home runs?
It's crazy. But then Vladdy's not, like, he's no slouch. 6 runs here in the postseason I think he's tied the record for most for Jays, and we've still got a series left here in the final. But like, it solidified for me last night. I'll say this again. I say it about hockey all the time. It's a line from Moneyball, but I always say it. I say it about the big 4 sports all the time when we get near the end and things like this happen, where you have, it's like somebody wrote this last night, Ryan. Down 3-1, a couple innings left. The guy who we all rely on after Vladdy, the Springer dinger, can he do it? And he hits it at home, and then the next 2 innings, we get it done. But just how can you not be romantic about baseball? It was just, I was watching it and I was like, this is absolutely incredible. This is what they write books about. This is what they base movie scripts on. It was just incredible. And to see everyone online as well, just being like, I got text to my phone being like, I got a text from one friend of mine who was like, I have no idea about the rules of baseball or anything, but this is absolute magic.
Yes, that's so well said. And even the time of year, just like as the leaves are falling and the weather's getting more crisp, and there's something about baseball in the fall, right? Yeah. Like in our live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. I love this. Joe says, I was living in Toronto when the Jays won the World Series in 93. Says
too.
The city went absolutely nuts. Gizmo says that they picked up on what you did, Johnny. Says the Blue Jays know that they have a nation behind them. They know how proud we are. They know how much we support them. Aaron, how about Aaron has a friend who went to Toronto, decided he's staying there for as long as the Jays are in the World Series. If you're in Toronto, I've got buddies right now there's group chats that are happening. People are coming. I mean, people are going to be doing this across the country, and of course the United States as well.
Of course,
they're going to be looking to get out to Toronto. The hotels are going to be crazy. The tickets are going to be crazy.
Oh, insane!
I actually think it's probably smarter. I don't know if I should reveal this. It's probably smarter and cheaper to try to get down to Dodger Stadium. Go watch the Jays on the road in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Tyler Yaremchuk, I'll shout him out, Oilers Nation. He was down there for the game last night, and I'm just watching with jealousy as I see him, videoing and putting out to Snapchat and Instagram the moment when they all clinched and when they all came together and hugged, and it's just like, it's absolutely incredible. And here's the thing, what you just said, it really rings true. Like, yes, the LA Dodgers are probably the best baseball team we've seen in the last decade. Like, they are just deep. The top of their lineup is crazy. They hit home runs. They've got incredible, the bullpen. Everything is just amazing. But the one thing I always keep in the back of my mind is that's the storyline that you want for an underdog team, if you can call the Jays the underdog, because they are the only team now we know for sure that can beat the Dodgers, if anyone can. But you gotta beat the best to be the best. You wouldn't want to go up a team where it's like, hey, you're likely to win against these guys. You want to be the underdog. You want to beat the best. It means a lot more when you do. So I'm not counting the Blue Jays out. I'm definitely on the Jays train.
Oh yeah,
I always have been. Even though I look over to that Dodgers team and I'm like, man, they are just. That is one of the most incredible teams ever assembled in sports right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's very similar to like the Oilers against the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup final. People are going, this Panthers team is an absolute wagon.
They're just good.
Remember when the Toronto Raptors
so
against the Golden State Warriors, and that worked out all right for Toronto. I'm just loving all of these memories that are being shared in our live chat. But first, I want to get to this. This is hilarious from Bunny Slippers. And there were some people talking about this at our party last night. Bunny Slippers says, this is President Cheeto's worst nightmare, a Californian team against a Canadian team. Says go Jays. I do love the idea. I mean, it's, obviously the state of California and the White House are having their own dust-ups right now, but the Canada-U.S. battle in the World Series is a beautiful thing timing-wise right now. Let's not forget one of Canada's great all-time baseball experts, Freddie Freeman, playing on the Dodgers. But I digress. It's going to be fantastic. But some of you sharing, like, listen to this. This is so beautiful. Talking about your kids. Gizmo says I had a new baby in my lap when Joe Carter hit that homer in '93. She was 6 weeks old, and all of those memories came flooding back last night. I saw some of you talking about your dads. What about this? Alicia says the last time I watched the World Series was with my dad when I was 10 years old, and the Jays were in it. She says, I wish I could watch this one with him. But the memory makes me happy. That's beautiful, Alicia, and that's why we do it. That's why as sports fans, why we're here. And everybody's going to have their own stories. Absolutely fantastic stuff.
Yeah, and right now here in Edmonton, it's a happy face emoji on an otherwise. I don't want to bring it up now. I know it's the start of the season, but the Oilers are it's a little touch and go right now with the Oilers. This has been, and I don't mean to bring this up when we're talking about all the joy of the Toronto Blue Jays, but man, this road trip, I don't know if you've been watching. It's just
try not to watch.
When you go on a road trip this long.
Still waiting for Evan Bouchard to give me a single point in my hockey pool.
Oh, how about Connor McDavid to get a goal? But
Connor
when they go on a road trip this long and you lose this many times, it must feel like they've been on the road like a month. You know what I mean? It just must be dragging on. So they got one more game, and then they come home, and then we'll see. But, hey, I'm fine with losses at the start of the season. That's okay. Figure it out and get there by Christmas.
Get them out of the way now. Get them out of the way now, right? Emily's making a fair point. She says you're going to go to Dodger Stadium. That would mean going to the United States, Ryan, which is true. But I'll tell you what, if I'm going to the United States, I'm going to go to cheer on a Canadian team in a state like California. Undecided yet on traveling to the United States. This is great from AC. He says, as a newly bandwagon fan, I'm ignorant of the Dodgers' skill. Therefore, the Jays are a powerhouse, and I will take no further questions.
But Dodger Stadium, an incredible place to go. Built in like 1962, like one of the, all these baseball teams have these newer places. Like Dodger Stadium it's an institution. It's a great place to go watch a game.
We went down there right after we got engaged in, it would have been 2008, to see the Jays play the Dodgers, as a matter of fact. And it was there's Dodger Stadium, there's palm trees.
Yeah,
all behind
crazy.
The outfield. It's a completely different vibe.
It's going to be nice and warm there
than
for
any
this
other
series.
ballpark. Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. I want to get to more of your comments here on this election. Of course, we are still awaiting results. For the most part, the most definitive result that we have of the major storylines in the big cities would be Jeremy Farkas appearing to win and will be the mayor-elect, will be the next mayor of Calgary. We'll wait on that. And the race in Edmonton is underway. You got to be kind of careful how you report this stuff, of course, because things can change. But as it stands right now, and a shout-out to Taproot, we're waiting, again, 48 out of 236 polls reporting. So there's a lot of votes that'll still be coming in. But Andrew Knack off to an early lead. Tim Cartmel on his heels, but about 9 points back right now. Michael Walters, looking at about a third of Knack's vote total right now. Omar Mohammed right behind him.
How about Omar, though? Didn't think I'd see 10%.
You know what,
him.
man? I will say this. Like Omar Mohammed, we'll shout out Raheem Jaffer as well, about 4.5% of the vote. I know he would have hoped to do better there. I think, I'm not convinced that Raheem Jaffer, he talks. I told you I had a chat with him in person the other day, and I'm not 100% convinced. He says to me, I don't know about, I said, Raheem, you never want to ask a politician or a candidate in an election before the election, what are you going to do if you lose? It's kind of a, you don't ask an athlete in a playoff series.
I'm going to Disneyland.
What's your plan if you lose? But I was picking his brain a little bit on a potential return to federal politics. Because I see an interesting storyline. I've shared it on the show before. In Edmonton, Strathcona, federally speaking, Heather McPherson's there now. Linda Duncan was there before. NDP, members of parliament. Heather McPherson seeking the leadership of the federal NDP. She was one of, 7 that survived in the federal election. But Raheem Jaffer was the MP in that riding for 4 terms. before Linda Duncan. So that's a riding that has gone Conservative and NDP, and I just can't help but wonder if maybe Raheem Jaffer has eyes on that again. He said to my face that at this point it's not something he's considering, but I'm not convinced.
So maybe this race was just a way to get his face out there.
Get his name out
boost.
there.
Yeah,
you know, maybe get his name out there.
Sure.
Or, I mean, I don't think that anybody really runs for mayor without at least some desire to be mayor.
But Omar getting that 10%, that affected the top three candidates for sure. And I expected to see there's, like I said, he's got a lot of people rallying behind him. Big cheers when he walks in a room. I thought, okay, maybe if he can do 5%. I did not see double that. I did not see almost 11% that he's now at. Can I just mention this, though? Voter turnout, I mean, 30% in
great.
Calgary showing the same. I mean, I've only been here since 2008, so I only remember the election just before I came here. I think it was 2007. But the numbers were higher then. I heard somebody say on a news program, I won't say their name this morning because we don't like them, but that it could be lowest voter turnout in 45 years or something like that.
And
it's insane.
You know, I have a number of thoughts on this, and I know Real Talkers will as well. Like, part of me finds that to be so discouraging.
Really discouraging.
Like, really discouraging. It was killing me to hear people in our unofficial unscientific Twitter poll, anecdotally here with Karen and Tim and Max and our live chat. Everybody's reporting. We sure appreciate you guys. You're our eyes and ears on the street. You're our word on the street. But talking about how they were seeing people, or even people in good faith, that they had no choice, but they had to go. They had to leave the line. They've
got things to do.
It can be a hard deadline. Either your work shift is starting and you're not the boss. You can't show up late, or your kid needs to be picked up from daycare before the doors are locked and they call the police. Like, these are real life things for people. And I think a lot of people budgeted like 90 minutes or 2 hours to vote.
Which
I also
should be
wonder
enough.
what it's like. You know, you wonder what it's like, Johnny, when I mean, did the Blue Jays Game 7 play into it?
I was thinking that as well.
You know, and people even on X or on different social media, I saw a lot on Instagram, on stories, people talking about how, you know, it took me 2 hours to vote. It took me 90 minutes. That, in a way, I mean, voter suppression is a big word to use. It's kind of an allegation. I'm not necessarily meaning that. I'm not saying that those of you were participating in that, you know, you're sharing your displeasure. It's good. It's good to be public about what your experience was, because then we can drive conversations around it. Mm-hmm. And the next time we talk to Alberta's premier, you better believe that we'll be talking about this. But I also wonder, I mean, just in real life, the way that people's lives work, if they're on their Instagram and they're seeing their friends reporting it took them 2 hours to vote,
100%.
A lot of people are going to go, I'm not doing that.
It was like a perfect storm. You had Jays game. Diwali probably factored in too. People are spending time with family, friends, celebrating Diwali. We talked about that with Supriya yesterday. And then just, I mean, I don't want to blame it all on that, but like knowing that there is no electronic system in place, that everything is pencil and hand count and all of that, it maybe discouraged people to just, hey, you know what? This race, you know, and maybe people thought in their mind, it's probably already decided here or there, or I know in Calgary it wasn't, but, and maybe they just chose to sit it out, and can you blame them?
I love this. This from Auntie Danny in our live chat. It says in all caps, new way of voting. If you turn back the clock to the 1980s, maybe, says this is the old way of voting. We did kind of rewind it, didn't we? I will say this. You know, I regret to report that our good buddy Harman Candola was unsuccessful in his bid for city council. He's confirmed to us. And I won't read too much from our live chat, because that, or our group chat rather, because that's shared in confidence. But Harman does say this, says Diwali just killed our votes. He said we lost huge votes with Diwali. So Diwali, pardon me. Yeah. But Alberta Girl says electronic polls are not necessary. Even countries with far larger populations rely on people, like on hand counts. Plus, it creates employment. Versus paying some multinational company for their machines. Yeah, I don't know if I'm sold on that. I mean, I don't know if I worry about employment on election day as much as I worry about efficiency at elections and trying to be as efficient as possible. I'm up for debate on this one, though. I think I've got some different opinions on that. I'm curious to know where Real Talkers would land on that. You know, Super Chat Ken says, I'd be curious to know how many don't believe at all that municipal councils even hold any sway in a province that has put its thumb on decisions and on funding for municipalities. He wonders, like, do councils even really control their taxes anymore? Denis wonders, how can Edmonton balance its books when the province doesn't pay its bills. Kenzie says, I don't think cities should be allowed to increase tax rates. Property taxes are increasing so much. I mean, they have no other choice. They can't run deficits. Ken K says this municipal election was handled with standard UCP inefficiency. Gosh, there's so many different perspectives to come at this from, right? There's a lot of talk, dubious in here, talking about, my taxes, your taxes, everyone's taxes should be going to public schools. There's a debate happening in our live chat on that. It says if you want to pay above that for your kid to be indoctrinated, that's your choice. I'll let you know, Real Talkers, our next episode, which will be the 22nd of October, that's Wednesday. We do have a plan. Like, number one, we expect to speak with Jeremy Farkas unless something dramatic happens or something changes. If there's been an announcement in Edmonton, which we sure hope there will be, we expect that we'll speak to the mayor-elect in Edmonton. But we also do have an interview booked with the head of there's an organization in the province of Alberta representing independent and private schools. And they've reached out to us and said, listen, and they're not just referencing Real Talk. They're just saying, generally speaking, they're saying we are being, and I'm paraphrasing, these are not their words, let me be clear, but they're saying we are being piled on right now through this teachers strike and a lot of the talk around public versus private education funding. And I personally, Ryan Jespersen, I think that's good. I think it's a productive conversation to have. I don't know that it's good when people feel like they're getting piled on, but they've requested an audience. They've requested an appearance on the show. I said, why wouldn't we have that? I think it'll be a good conversation. And so while our bookings over the next few days are somewhat in flux based on what we know about the election results, we do expect to be revisiting a conversation on public versus private education on the next episode of the show. Before we go any further, I do want to remind you about some of the other things that we have cooking. And as Johnny mentioned, the Edmonton Oilers, the Calgary Flames, both big games this week. The Oilers with a big one tonight, and Albertans, no doubt, will be checking out the odds as we speak, and as they change at playalberta.ca. You can also check out the Play Alberta app. Albertans are winning big with Play Alberta. Of course, that includes the stories every Thursday here on Real Talk. Alberta Wins, a fabulous feature that we're proud to roll out, telling Alberta's stories nationally and internationally. If you're wanting to get into the mix and have a little fun wagering on your Oilers, your Flames, your Elks, your Stamps, whatever it is, receive a $50 free bet with Play Alberta with a $50 deposit when you use code Ryan50. That's Ryan50, all one word. A $50 free bet with a $50 deposit when you use the code Ryan50 at playalberta.ca or at the Play Alberta app. You must be 18 or older to play, and if you do gamble, please use your game sense. Pathways Alliance driving conversation on the incredible contributions that Alberta and Canada's oil and gas industry are making, not just across the country, but around the world. Pathways Alliance is the 6th biggest oil sands companies in our home province of Alberta working together to meet global energy demand, powering Canada's economy along the way. You can learn more about the economic benefits of the oil and gas industry and the Pathways Alliance initiative. That's the one that Prime Minister Mark Carney talked to us about on September 10th. You can visit their website at pathwaysalliance.ca. A message for business owners across the province of Alberta and across the country. The team at North Road Investment Council is working with established professionals and business owners that are asking the big financial questions, like should you be paying yourself in dividends or salary? Should you be putting savings into your TFSA or your RRSP, or just leave investment inside your corporation for your eventual retirement? There may be another option that your current investment advisor has not brought to your attention. If your business is earning greater than $200,000 or more annually, if you're over the age of 40, one option that deserves a serious look is the individual pension plan. They call it the IPP, a powerful retirement strategy that can provide higher tax-deferred savings over RRSPs, but it's not for everybody. That's why the team at North Road Investment Council has put together a clear, plain language white paper outlining the benefits and the challenges of an IPP. You can learn if it's right for you. Visit northroadic.com to request your copy today. And coming up this week on Real Talk, Kerry Williams will join us from North Road Investment Council with some great insights for you Real Talkers as you plan your eventual retirement. Kubi Renewable Energy, Western Canada's busiest solar installer celebrating 10 years this year. We love this company, the way that they approach every single project, every installation with incredible attention to detail. 10 years ago, this company was founded by electricians and engineers, not salespeople. So their attention to detail is unparalleled. If you're thinking of going green, making that move toward your own sustainable future, you're going to want to get a free solar quote from the team at Kuby today. You can also check out employment opportunities on their website. The hub for that is kuby.ca, Kuby.ca. And while we have your attention, we want to make sure that you're aware of UCAN Youth Services and the incredible work that this Edmonton-based nonprofit is doing, helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. That includes ready-to-work programs like the Verto Project, a 20-week pre-employment program that helps youth between 18 and 24 years of age transition out of harm's way. In some cases, it's gang involvement. In some cases, it's houselessness or food insecurity that's a daily challenge for these young people. How are you going to be getting a resume together and going to job interviews if you're just trying to make it through the week? Well, the Verto Project, that pre-employment program, takes 12 different youth every 8 weeks. You can learn more at ucan.ca. If you know a young person that could benefit from this and could use a door open that they can work to walk through, make sure you check out the website. Again, that's ucan.ca. So what do you think? The Oilers going to win big for us tonight, buddy? This is one that we need.
I got no idea.
I'm feeling good about this one. I'm feeling good about it. It's a win that we need, and I think that the team could use it. They're taking on the Ottawa Senators. You've got Skinner out there expected to start against Allmark, and I think that Skinner's feeling like he's got something to prove. He's had some solid outings, shutout in New York, and then some tough outings. Ottawa's missing their captain, Brady Tkachuk. Tim Stützle's been a little slow out of the gates. Any NHL reports I'm providing here on Real Talk will be directly based on the roster of my own personal fantasy hocky team, so I can give you those updates.
Is that what it is?
Day to day. That's
is
literally
Skinner your goalie?
No, he's not my goalie. No, but I actually have an unpopular goaltender on my fantasy team. Well, Sergei Bobrovsky. But he's been good for me. But
I will say one thing that Oilers fans were screaming for in the offseason. Thank gosh we didn't take John Gibson, eh? This season he had to start there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it growing pains? Is it, there was a lot of changes to the roster. I think it's just, kind of getting to know how to work together better. And I will say this, even though I was kind of happy that Kane left the team because I wasn't really the biggest fan of him. We kind of have this hole for like an instigator. You know what I mean? When the chips are down, someone who like rams someone hard. We saw Kane do it on the Canucks the other night, to Edmonton and then to another team the night after. I can't remember who it was. But when the chips are down, someone who like hits someone big, rolls by the bench, makes faces at the other team, gets them off their game. We kind of have a hole there. So that's something we may think about before the trade deadline is. And I know those players are going to the wayside. They're kind of the old school players now, but we kind of have a hole for that guy on our team right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of stuff to cover. We will be staying on top of all these stories and, of course, hitting refresh just like everybody else all through the day, regardless of where you are in our home province of Alberta or even beyond. Want to know your thoughts on this? You can check out Taproot Edmonton for the unofficial results that they're posting here. We are seeing now 300 of 1,020 polls reporting. That gives you a sense of where that's at. How on earth is Calgary so far ahead of Edmonton on these polls?
I don't know. I don't know what's happening there.
It's like the tale of two cities.
I did hear.
Not even close. Calgary's results were out like first thing this morning. Boom.
I heard Edmonton had some staffing issues, though.
People are reporting it and the delays there. But let us know about your community. If you've not heard it mentioned today, if there's an intriguing or interesting storyline, we'd love to hear from you. All of your emails to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Consider it as well for the flamethrower presented the last episode of every week. That'll be Friday this week from our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. So we expect to speak with Jeremy Farkas tomorrow. We expect or hope to speak with the mayor-elect in Edmonton, whoever that may be. And we definitely will speak with John Jagersma. He's leading the team at the Association of Independent Schools and Colleges in Alberta. A different take on private and independent schools if you want to get us an email to consider ahead of that interview, you know where to find us. Thanks for subscribing to the show on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining the conversation today. We'll see you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.